The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the aircraft doors sealed shut, locking everyone inside a narrow metal tube suspended between exhaustion and impatience. It was a full flight, the kind where every seat was taken and every passenger carried their own invisible burden. The air smelled faintly of recycled oxygen, coffee, and stress. Conversations faded into murmurs as the engines whined softly, preparing to taxi. Somewhere near the back, a baby whimpered. Somewhere near the front, a man sighed loudly, at nothing in particular. And in seat 2, fora, by the window, a black teenage girl sat gripping her phone like it was the only solid thing left in her world. Her name was Aaliyah Brooks, 17 years old. Slim build, neat braids pulled back under a gray hoodie that was 2 sizes too big. She had boarded the plane quietly, scanned her boarding pass without a word, and slipped into her seat hoping no one would notice her. Flying alone made her nervous. Flying while her mother lay unconscious in a hospital bed made it unbearable. The call she was on wasn't casual chatter, it wasn't gossip, it was survival. "I landed at the airport already," Aaliyah whispered into the phone. "I'm on the plane now." Her aunt's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with worry. Aaliyah turned her head slightly toward the window, lowering her voice even more. "I'm okay," she lied gently. I just wanted to hear your voice before we take off." Her fingers trembled as she traced the edge of the window. The ground crew moved outside like tiny figures in a distant world. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "I'm scared, Auntie." A few rose up. A flight attendant noticed her. The attendant had been working flights for over a decade, and tonight her patience was razor thin. The delay at the gate, the full cabin, the constant questions, it all piled up. When she saw Aaliyah with a phone to her ear, her lips pressed into a sharp line, she didn't approach calmly. She marched. "You need to end that call," the attendant said sharply. Aaliyah flinched, pulling the phone slightly away from her ear. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "We haven't taken off yet. I'll hang up in just a second." The attendant crossed her arms. "That's not how this works. End the call, now." The word now echoed louder than it needed to. Heads turned, eyes lifted. Aaliyah felt her chest tighten. "I just need 1 minute," she said, voice shaking despite her effort to stay calm. "My mom is really sick and—" "I don't care," the attendant snapped. "Rules are rules." The sentence landed like a slap. A man across the aisle raised his eyebrows. A woman to Rose's back leaned forward slightly. The atmosphere shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Aaliyah nodded quickly, panic creeping up her spine. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'm hanging up." She brought the phone back to her ear. "Auntie, I have to go," I said. "End it now," the attendant interrupted loudly. "Not after you finish your conversation." Aaliyah froze. Her face burned. Her throat closed. She ended the call mid-sentence and stared down at her lap, biting the inside of her cheek to keep from crying. Her phone screen went dark, reflecting her own wide, frightened eyes. "That wasn't necessary," someone muttered nearby. The attendant spun around. "Excuse me? You heard me?" the voice replied. She complied. "This does not concern you," the attendant snapped back. Aaliyah wished the floor would open and swallow her whole. She felt exposed, judged, and suddenly very alone. Her hands curled into fists inside her sleeves. The engines roared louder as the plane began to move. The moment should have ended there. For most passengers, it did. But the attendant wasn't done asserting control. She leaned closer to Aaliyah, her voice low but cutting. "If I see that phone out again, this flight ends for you. Understand?" Aaliyah looked up slowly. Her eyes glistened. "Yes." The attendant straightened, then added loudly, "Some people think they're above the rules." That was when a man stood up. "Hey," he said firmly. "That's enough." The attendant turned. "Offended, sir. Sit down." "No," he replied. "You embarrassed her for no reason. She broke protocol. She ended the call." Another passenger added. "You kept going." The tension spread like electricity. Aaliyah's heart hammered in her ears. She didn't want allies. She didn't want enemies. She just wanted peace. Then her phone buzzed. The sound was tiny, barely audible, but in the charged silence it might as well have been an alarm. The attendant's head snapped toward her. "I warned you." Aaliyah stared at the screen. One notification, one message from her aunt. She didn't answer it. She didn't touch anything, but the attendant stepped closer anyway. Give me the phone, she demanded. Alia's breath caught. What? Hand it over. That's not allowed, someone protested. The attendant reached out. That was the moment something inside Alia shifted. Fear was still there, thick and heavy, but beneath it was something else, something steadier. She stood up. Don't touch me. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The cabin fell silent. The attendant stared at her, stunned. Sit down, immediately. Alia didn't move. Her legs shook, but she stayed standing. I followed every instruction, she said. You embarrassed me. And now you're crossing a line. A murmur rippled through the cabin. This conversation is over, the attendant snapped. Captain, we'll hear about this, good, Alia said quietly. So will everyone else. The plane stopped moving. Minutes later, the captain appeared, calm but serious, followed by another crew member holding a tablet. He listened carefully, first to the attendant, then to Alia, then to the passengers who insisted on speaking up. The security was called. And when they walked down the aisle, it wasn't Alia. They approached. The two security officers moved slowly down the aisle, their presence heavy but controlled. Conversation stopped completely. No one reached for a phone. No one breathed too loudly. The captain gestured calmly toward the flight attendant, who stood rigid near the galley, arms crossed tightly like armor. Mom, one officer said, we need you to step off the aircraft. Her mouth fell open. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She was disruptive. The captain's voice stayed level. I've heard enough accounts to determine that isn't accurate. Alia sat frozen in her seat, heart pounding so hard she thought others might hear it. Her hands were clenched together, nails pressing into her skin. She didn't feel brave. She felt like she was about to throw up. The attendant glanced back at the cabin, eyes flashing with humiliation and anger. This isn't over, she said sharply, then turned and walked off with the officers. No applause followed, no cheers, just a quiet, collective release of tension as the door closed behind them. The captain addressed the passengers. Thank you for your patience. We'll be departing shortly. As he turned to leave, his eyes met Olia's. He gave her a small nod. Na sympathy, respect. The engines restarted. The plane taxied again. Olia finally let herself breathe. The woman across the aisle leaned closer. You handled that better than most adults I know, she said softly. Alia managed a weak smile. I didn't feel like it. That's usually how it works, the woman replied. A few rose up. The man who had spoken first gave her a thumbs up before sitting back down. Alia looked away, embarrassed, but something warm settled in her chest. Once the plane was in the air, the lights dimmed further. Clouds swallowed the wings. The world outside disappeared. Alia turned her phone back on. A flood of messages appeared. Are you okay? Why did you hang up so fast? I'm worried. Please respond. Her fingers shook as she typed. I'm okay. I'll explain when we land. I stood up for myself. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. I'm so proud of you. Olia stared at the words until her vision blurred. For the first time since boarding, she cried, quietly, silently, the kind of crying that empties something heavy out of you instead of filling you up with more pain. The rest of the flight passed gently. A new flight attendant checked in, careful, respectful, offering water and snacks without pressure. No one raised their voice. No one stared. When the plane finally touched down, the cabin erupted into the usual chaos of seatbelts and overhead bins, but something felt different, lighter. As Alia stepped into the jet bridge, another crew member approached her. If you'd like to file a formal report, she said gently, we can help you with that. Alia thought for a moment, then she nodded. Yes, I would. She didn't do it out of anger. She did it so the next girl wouldn't feel the way she had. Outside the airport, her aunt wrapped her in a fierce hug, holding her longer than necessary. You scared me, she said. I know, Alia replied, but I learned something. Her aunt pulled back, studying her face. What? That being quiet doesn't always keep you safe, Alia said. Sometimes it just makes you invisible. Her aunt smiled through tears. You're growing up, Alia. Looked back at the terminal doors, at the planes taking off into the night. She knew her life wouldn't suddenly be easier. She knew people like that attendant existed everywhere. But she also knew this. Her voice worked, and she would never forget how powerful that felt. Alia didn't realize how much that moment would follow her until days later. At the hospital, while machines beeped softly around her mother's bed, she replayed the flight in her mind, not the shouting, not the embarrassment, But the exact second she said, "Don't touch me," the words had come out steadier than she felt, like they had been waiting inside her for a long time. Sitting there now, watching her mother sleep beneath thin white sheets, Aaliyah understood something she hadn't before. Fear didn't disappear when you stood up for yourself. It just stopped being the loudest voice in the room. Her aunt noticed the change too. Aaliyah spoke a little more firmly. She looked people in the eye longer. When a nurse spoke too sharply, Aaliyah didn't shrink. She asked questions, calm ones, confident ones. A week later, the email arrived. The airline thanked her for bringing the matter to their attention. They apologized for the experience. They informed her that the attendant had been placed under formal review and removed from passenger-facing duties pending investigation. A voucher was attached at the bottom. It didn't matter to Aaliyah. The words mattered more. "Your report helped us identify a serious lapse in professional conduct." She read that sentence 3 times. At school, when she finally returned, rumors had already spread. Someone had posted about the incident online, a blurry photo, a caption full of assumptions. Some comments were supportive, others weren't. Aaliyah read them once, then closed the app. She didn't need strangers to decide what the moment meant. During history class, her teacher asked the class a question about civil disobedience. The room went quiet. Normally Aaliyah would have kept her head down. This time, she raised her hand. When she spoke, the words didn't rush, they didn't hide. She talked about authority, about rules without empathy, about how silence is often mistaken for compliance. The class listened, even the kids who never listened. Afterward, a girl she barely knew stopped her in the hallway. "That was powerful," she said. "I wish I could talk like that." Aaliyah smiled. "You can." That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the plane, the lights, the way everyone had gone quiet when she spoke. She realized something else then. Standing up hadn't just changed how others saw her, it changed how she saw herself. She wasn't just the quiet girl by the window anymore. She was someone who could draw a line, someone who could say no, someone who could take up space without apologizing for it. Months later, when she boarded another flight, she still felt nervous. Her hands still shook a little, but when she put her phone in airplane mode, it was because she chose to, not because she was afraid of being humiliated. As the plane lifted into the sky, Aaliyah looked out the window again. The world shrank below her, lights blurring into patterns. She pressed her palm against the glass and smiled softly. Some flights change where you're going, others change who you are. And Aaliyah knew, without a doubt, which kind this one had been.